Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Tina. It's Sandra Graham. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you, Sandra. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us from Finland. So this is a session on bullying as a group phenomenon, and I think as we saw in the earlier session on the neuroscience, the field still largely tends to think of bullies and victims and perhaps being at the opposite ends of a social adjustment or maladjusted continuum. But we also know that bullying takes place in context, in classrooms and on the playground, the bathroom, and that there are multiple roles that get enacted other than being a bully or a victim, such as reinforcers or defenders or bystanders who observe bullying and do absolutely nothing about it. So when we think about the experience of bullying or the phenomenon, we think it's really important to look at it as a group phenomenon and take into account all these multiple roles that get enacted. And we've got 3 experts this morning who are going to be talking about that. And also when we think about bullying as a group phenomenon, that means that some of the characteristics, rather than being individual characteristics that might put someone more at risk to being a bully or a victim, there might also be group characteristics or social identities like race or culture. And I think some of our participants might be addressing that also. So really looking at bullying in a much broader context. So Tina and Wendy and Karen who are here, so I've gotten very strict orders. I actually thought this was a 90-minute session, but actually it's 75 minutes. So each of you will strictly have 15 minutes. Somebody in here might even cut you off at the end of 15 minutes. We won't have time to take questions. I thought we could have we could have time to take a couple of questions after each presentation, but we won't. So each of you will speak for a maximum of 15 minutes, and then we'll take questions after that. Okay? So Tina's going to start, and I asked Tina Salmivalli to start because she has done so much of the foundational work on understanding bullying as a group phenomenon and identifying these various roles that get enacted. And she's also the principal investigator on probably the school-based intervention that's getting the most attention in the world, Kiva, which is implemented in 90% of the schools in Finland, quite amazing, and is finding quite remarkable results, some of which involve changing the behavior of bystanders. So we asked her to give us a brief sort of contextual historical overview of why studying bullying as a group phenomenon is really important, and tell us a bit about how the Kiva anti-bullying program is focusing on these broader roles that get enacted. So Tina, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, 15 minutes.
So good morning to everyone, or good evening from Finland. And yeah, it's really a pleasure to participate and talk to you about something that really has been my focal interest in my own research for almost 25 years. So I will talk about why it's important and useful to go beyond the bully-victim dyad when discussing bullying, studying bullying, and trying to intervene in bullying. And in a way, thinking about bullying as a group phenomenon, or thinking about bullying and the peer group, it's in a way like returning to the roots, because at least the European discussion and research tradition on bullying was originally built on the concept of mobbing, or as it is in Swedish language, mobbning. And this word refers specifically to a group that's attacking against an individual. And the Austrian etiologist Konrad Lorenz had first, already in his book in the 1966, talked about mobbing amongst birds and animals. And then in the early 70s, the Swedish doctor Peter Paul Heinemann applied this concept to school children and described it as a situation when the entire school class, or the majority of a school class, attacks an individual child. Dan Olweus is the one who started systematic research on bullying, first in Sweden and then a bit later in Norway. And his first study was done among schoolboys in Stockholm. And Olweus wanted to stress the role of individual bullies and actually warned about overemphasizing the collective aspect of bullying, or many people attacking against one. So this was kind of step maybe towards the individualistic view again. However, Olweus already described group mechanisms that were involved in bullying, such as social contagion or gradual cognitive changes in how the victimized peer was perceived by the members of the group, and so on. Well, today more and more in the literature we see it stated that bullying is a group phenomenon. And this doesn't nowadays necessarily refer to a gang or a big group of bullies attacking against one individual, but rather to a complex process where group members are involved in different ways, having different roles. And in a while I will give some examples of how students' individual characteristics as well as some contextual factors contribute to a process which can have really hurtful outcomes for the targeted individual. And I really would argue on the basis of my studies and many other studies that have been done during the past decades that placing bullying in its group context really helps to better understand why some individuals are motivated to bully others, why so few kids are supporting and defending the victimized peer, why bullying can be such a persistent problem, why the adjustment of victims varies across different classrooms or schools, and finally, what needs to be done in order to prevent bullying or stop bullying. In social groups where bullying takes place, ringleader bullies can typically be identified. And our studies on social goals of children and youth have demonstrated that these ringleader bullies, especially when they are males, tend to have a high degree of what we have called status goals. Assessing such goals, we have asked students to report how important it is for them when they are together with their peers that they appear self-confident and make an impression on others, that the others think they are smart, or that the others respect and admire them. How is this related to the peer group? Although having status or power are individual motives, their fulfillment depends on the group. It's the group that assigns status to its members. So, bullying might be a way to try to gain status and power and admiration, and actually it seems to be quite successful means to such ends, as bullies are often perceived as popular kids in their classrooms. So even though they are not necessarily well liked, when you assess social acceptance or liking by asking kids who do you like most in your class, but despite this they are perceived as popular. So when you ask school kids or kids in a classroom who are the most popular kids in your class, bullies often get these nominations. And actually studies suggest that bullying helps to maintain status and even to increase status over time. Bullies are selective in their aggressive behavior, so they don't target anyone with the same likelihood. By choosing victims who are submissive, maybe insecure of themselves, maybe physically weak, maybe just the ones who have low power or who are new kids in the classroom and don't belong to the friendship networks yet. By choosing this kind of victims, the perpetrators can repeatedly demonstrate their power and their status to the others without being confronted either by the victims or by the other peers. So if bullying is to demonstrate power and status, spectators are necessary. And indeed, peers are known to be present in by far most bullying situations. So bullies actually don't look for a situation when they are together with the target behind the corner so that no one can see their mean attacks. Quite the contrary, their moment is one where there are other peers present. And we have studied what these other peers do in situations of bullying, and we have called these ways the bystanders respond to bullying, their participant roles that they take in bullying situations. So in short, this means that in addition to bullies and their victims, there are kids who assist the bullies actively, who join their aggressive attacks and help the bullies in many ways, and we have called them the assistants of the bully. There are also children and youth who reinforce and socially reward the bullies for their behaviors. And that means that, for instance, by verbal or non-verbal cues, they are signaling to the bullies that their behavior is fun or okay or cool. For instance, they are laughing or showing in other ways that this is okay or this is fun. So we call these kids reinforcers of the bully. There are also kids who withdraw from the bullying situations and don't take sides with anyone. And in this figure, you can see them on the right-hand side. They are outsiders. And they are kids who often have very strong anti-bullying attitudes, but despite this, they don't act on these attitudes and they don't publicly show that they are against bullying. So we can also say that they, in a way, passively let the bullying go on. They don't do anything to stop it. Luckily, there are also kids who defend the victimized students, defenders of the victim, and they may be actively intervening in bullying episodes when someone is being picked on, or they may just support the victims, maybe after the situation, telling that I think they are wrong, or I think that you are okay, and I want to play with you, and so on. So this is what is going on in very many bullying situations. There are kids who are taking on different roles or who are assigned different roles. So, is it really important then how these spectators or bystanders behave in bullying situations? We have different types of evidence about the importance of how the peer group is reacting. And one evidence comes from the interviews with adults who used to be bullied in their school days. And the most negative memories that they really have related to that bullying that was going on, those memories are not related to the mean acts by the individual bullies. No, they don't remember those as the most traumatic things. As most negative and traumatic, they remember that everyone was just laughing or no one seemed to care what was happening to me. So that's what really feels so bad about being bullied. Also, we have done some studies with bullying which is currently going on and seen that those victimized students who are defended by at least one classmate are better adjusted than the undefended victims. They have a higher self-esteem, they have a better social position, and so on. And this is the case even if we control the frequency by which these two types of victims are being harassed. So defending really matters for the individual students. But at the classroom level, the bystanders' reactions also matter. So there is quite much difference actually between different classrooms in the frequency of bullying behavior. And these differences are partly explained by how typical for students in the classroom it is to reinforce the bully's behavior. So the likelihood of victimization is higher in classrooms where reinforcing the bully is occurring at high levels when it's normative. Also, we have found in another study that individual level risk factors that often put a child at risk for victimization, such as anxiety or social rejection, are more likely to lead to victimization in some classrooms than in others. And especially in those kind of classrooms where reinforcing the bully is common and defending is rare, these individual level factors are most likely to actually lead to victimization. Other evidence about the importance of the group comes from intervention studies. So our Kiva anti-bullying program that's now widely used in Finnish schools and also in some other countries outside of Finland, we are specifically addressing the bystanders in this program and their responses when witnessing bullying by different means that I don't go now in detail. But anyway, there are different ways to make peers aware of their role in the bullying process and to change the bystander behaviors. And we have actually found that with a program addressing these bystanders' behaviors, we can significantly reduce the prevalence of both bullying perpetrators and victims. But also we really can influence the bystander responses, how they react when they see bullying going on. This is just one example of the results of the KIVA program, and you can just see that there are big reductions in 9 different forms of victimization. Actually, these are all of the forms that we measured that took place during the first year of implementing KIVA program in KIVA schools in comparison to changes that took place in control schools. So just to say that by targeting the bystanders and their responses, we can effectively reduce the prevalence of bullies and victims. This is what has happened in Finland since the broad rollout of the KIVA program, which took place in the fall of 2009. So we still gather data every year from KIVA schools about the prevalence of bullies and victims. And here you can see the nice downward trend of students who are repeatedly bullying others during the 6 years of implementing the program. But what is still stronger evidence of the importance of the bystanders' responses? This figure shows you a study that was published recently and where we looked at the mechanisms of the KIVA program. Like, what is it that changes first that leads to decreases in bullying behavior? And we found out that at the student and classroom level, the mechanisms were partly different. But for instance, as you can see in the student level box, a mediator box there, you can see that in addition to anti-bullying attitudes, changes in anti-bullying attitudes and changes in the students' perceptions of how their teachers think about bullying, also students' perceptions of bystanders' behaviors were changing as a result of the KIVA program, and that change in turn led to decreases in bullying. So those students who perceived their classmates now less reinforcing of bullying behavior and more supporting of the victims, they decreased most in their bullying behaviors. So this shows that not only KIVA program, which targets the bystanders' responses, reduces bullying, but these reductions are really partly mediated by changes in bystanders' behaviors. As general conclusions, I just would like to say that bullying is partly motivated by something that's happening in the group and maintained by something that's happening in the group. And there is nowadays a lot of, I used to talk about the importance of bystanders for many years, and until my students started to say that, can you really prove that it matters how the bystanders are responding? And I said that, well, I don't really have so much evidence about that. And then we started collecting evidence, and now we really know about interviews from correlational studies as well as experimental, that is intervention studies, that bystanders are a key and they should be influenced and they can be influenced also by the interventions where we try to prevent and address bullying problems. Okay, I think that I have used my 15 minutes.
Perfect.
And I'm...
Perfect, thank you.
So thank you very much for your attention.
So don't go away. We'll come back to
No, I'm not going away.
general questions. Thank you very much, Tina.